After completing our andesite factory last week, it's time to move on to the next material I need, TUFF. I'm mostly using it for under my train tracks, but also as a building material too. So this week, I'm building a whole factory dedicated to it, as well as getting some bonus materials from crushing the TUFF too. So for our TUFF factory, I'm thinking of placing it over here, right next to our andesite factory that we made last episode and our rail factory. And the first thing I actually need to do is come into our andesite factory here and grab a bunch of andesite, because I do want to make this factory a little bit different compared to my other ones so far. And I want this first little building to actually be made out of some andesite. So if I quickly just flatten this area a little bit with some dirt, essentially want a little bit of a small building here, leaving room for some windows and a door frame. Then also have some kind of second floor here, I think. And use some copycat stairs just to make that look a bit more interesting. With something along those lines. And in fact, what I'm going to actually do real quick is go into my options over here, and I'm going to actually come into our atmosphere and sun, and I'm going to change the sun angle to pretty much the opposite of where it currently is, because the way that this faces was kind of away from the sun, and that doesn't look so nice when building, so I'll leave it like this for now. I'm also going to get rid of this chain briefly, because honestly, it's getting in the way. Then I more or less just want to add a couple more features onto here, mostly to break up the monotony of the gray, and just add some more interesting features. We can obviously add some girders in. Then I think I want to do as well is actually break some of these. So I can add some mossy cobblestone, because there isn't a mossy andesite, but stone is close enough. And honestly, I think that makes that look way better. And then we can throw in some buttons here. It's again, just for some color. Then for the roof, I think this will be relatively basic with just a typical kind of slanting roof, but I want to actually use some copper for this one, which I haven't actually done yet in this world. But the one thing I actually do need to set up is some kind of way of oxidizing the copper to the level that I want it at. And that's luckily not too difficult to do. I'm going to need a spout. Luckily only requires some copper casing, and I already have some dried kelp. Then if I come into my little workshop over here, I do have some fluid pipe hidden inside of here. So if we bring that up, we'll break away some of these encased gearboxes, throw in our spout, and actually make sure that this connects up correctly. There we go. And then in theory, if we grab some cut copper here and just throw it on top, that will start converting it to exposed cut copper. And I'm probably gonna have to do this a few times to get to the level that I want. And then I did grab some honeycomb from some bees' nests to make a honeycomb block, which I'm just gonna throw into our deploy over here. And once this is all done and ready, I can then throw my cut copper into where this honeycomb block is, and that will start waxing all the different copper pieces. Now I'm pretty sure this is not part of base create, and this is part of create oxidize, which is honestly extremely convenient. And that is currently in my mod pack, but my mod pack does need an update, and I will get around to it soon. I've added quite a few mods recently, and it probably would be quite nice to get that all updated for you guys. And there is all our stuff waxed, so it shouldn't keep on changing, although I guess I didn't actually need to wax this one because it's already at its furthest point, but whatever. But I have converted these to stairs, and then I think I'm going to use a mixture of the two to kind of get some kind of roof into this. And the two different variants of copper kind of just add a little bit of color and texture, so it looks a bit interesting, although that is a weirdly consistent pattern considering how random that is. Let me change it up a little bit quick. Okay, there we go, that's better. And now the one thing I actually wanted to do differently with this is I'm gonna have lots of different smaller facades, as if they were for like smaller warehouses and factories in the past. But of course, on the inside, they'll all be combined. So for this one, I'm gonna grab me some bricks, convert some of these into some different chipped variants, have a bit of a smaller little building here, throw in some granite, I think, just for a tiny bit of color variance. And then throw in a pretty simple deep slate roof. I really want to get rid of this power line for now until I reroute it somewhere. And then for this one, I think I'm going to bring it right out into the front here and use our mix of granite to make a pretty tall building actually. And this one is going to have a pretty big entrance with a nice big arch, which I'm going to use some copycat stairs and slabs for. And this will be the kind of main entrance to our factory over here. We'll add a bit of a lip to the building, and then I do want some nice big windows up here, using the same kind of windows that we do the other facades. And I am throwing in quite a lot of different bits of dark oak into these buildings, just because I think that helps contrast with the most colors. Throw in some more girders and a bit of a roof. And I realize I actually used the wrong andesite, so I fixed that. The other thing I actually want to do is once again break some of these blocks, because I actually want to throw in some copycat stairs into them and replace them down just to kind of make the building look a little bit more worn down. And the convenient part about putting it next to these windows is that it also makes it look like some window panes have been slightly broken. And I like how that looks. I think on the side of this building, I think I want to have some kind of chimney that goes above the roof line. And it's going to be a vaguely similar design to my andesite farm, but with a bit of different colors like blue. And then we can do the same thing of throwing a hay bale in and a campfire to make sure that the smoke goes as high as possible. That's looking pretty good so far. And then for the next building along, I think I'm going to use a mixture of some diorite, calcite, and oak planks again, like how I did on my barl factory. And we'll use some dark oak logs for a bit of a trim, some fences on the sides, some girders, and then once again use a bit of a deep slate roof. So we're going to make that a little bit more interesting by adding a bit of a different angled roof here. And I think for the last building on this row, I'm probably going to do something similar as I did from the first building, with a slightly different design. And there we go, like I said, similar to the first one, but a slightly different design, added almost like a little balcony thing on it. Now, before I do the rest of the buildings and some of the exterior decoration a bit more, I think I want to try my hand at like a very little simple crane. It's not going to move or anything. I like the idea of a little crane to pick up things off of trucks and stuff. So if we grab a bunch of industrial iron, pretty much place it on the edges of this building and make it reasonably tall. We can use some metal girders for a bit of structure for this. We can kind of bring this out to hold up the length of the crane sticking out towards the road. We'll have it kind of thin out a little bit here. And at the end here, I'm going to use a crushing wheel and some chains coming down from it, as that will be the thing that actually picks up things off the trucks. Then of course we can add some more girders through here for structural support. Then for the kind of crane cabin, I'm going to go with something very simple, as you're not going to be able to actually enter this thing. I think I'm just going to use some of these andesite pillars as they kind of look like metal. Wrap this entire area around with some of our window panes. Plop some more industrial iron on top. There we go, a very simple crane. Again, I'm not going to fill the inside of this with anything, as it's not going to serve actual any purpose. It's just there to add a bit of interest to the front of the facade here. Now, I think what I'm going to do is actually build the rest of this building so that we actually have an internal area to place all our stuff in, and I'll be back very shortly for you guys. And there we go, I have gotten the rest of the building at least to a decent point and thrown in a floor as well. I'll have to work on this a little bit more once we're actually done with all the little crate stuff inside. Speaking of that crate stuff, the first thing I actually need to do is make another cobblestone gen, because my original plan was to actually bring in the andesite from our andesite farm over here, which we do have quite a lot inside of this vault. But I decided to keep up with the amount of tuff that I wanted, that I would create more or less a second andesite farm in here. and it will probably be more efficient too, to be honest. So let's throw down a bunch of vaults, figure out exactly how I want to do this. I think I'm gonna have two separate systems here, one for generating the cobblestone and one for converting to gravel, probably behind these and then into flint at the front here. So if I quickly make another cobblestone generator, using of course the same kind of design, the lava in the middle and the water on the sides, drills in between, and I will probably actually replace the cobblestone that I used to surround this a little bit later so it doesn't look quite as ugly as it does at the moment. Back here, set up a really simple brushing wheel setup. Of course, our belts in, throw in our funnels. Also, I've just realized I haven't actually explained why I'm doing this. To make TUFF, at least with the recipe that I have added, you need andesite, cobblestone, and lava. And that will be turned into TUFF. So obviously we'll be getting cobblestone from our item vault here, getting some gravel out of this one, as well as some flint, and then mixing them together over here. And obviously in order to actually make our flint, we're gonna need a bunch of millstones, and I'm going to have some andesite funnels coming out of our item vaults to drop gravel into them, then some more funnels to take those out and into some belts down here. I'm actually going to bring out a separate line down here in order to pull out some gravel directly from the item vault. And then I'm also going to place a bunch of small belts here, and you'll understand why I'm doing that shortly. And the main reasoning is that I want to make a bunch of these weighted ejectors. I do need to go make some gold sheets for, and essentially what I'm going to do is place down a bunch of these, although they're obviously not actually set up properly yet, but these will be throwing any items from over here to over here, where I'm going to have our mixers and pressers for the andesite and TUFF. And I also need to actually place a bunch of funnels up here as well. Probably going to have two sets of TUFF generators. So for this, we're going to need 6 basins with our mechanical presses on top. And we're going to need a belt coming along the ground here, as well as some andesite funnels going inwards. And I am just going to place a chute here, as well as on top of all of these, which might seem a bit strange. Essentially what I'm going to do is hook these ejectors up to actually place into these chutes instead of directly into the basins. Because when I was doing some testing, I noticed one thing that tends to happen is when it shoots directly into the basin, it tends to leave some sitting on top. And for some reason with the chutes, it doesn't do that. So that's what I'm going to do for that. I need to set up these weighted ejectors pretty much to every single one of these chutes. And then this one, which is going to be pulling gravel out, I also want to place into this chute as well. And then the final thing I'm going to do here is change these all to about 10, just so it's not throwing too many of a stack at a time, because that is what also causes the overflow effect on top of the chutes. So that means now that all the flint should be coming into these chutes up here, and all the gravel into this bottom belt, and being mixed in these basins into some andesite. And I'll make sure that these are actually andesite by throwing in some andesite into the filters. And then back here, we are going to need another belt, although apparently I've run out of dried kelp, so I need to go and get some of that real quick. Can't believe I haven't made a farm for this yet. Okay, there we go. Got some more belts, and I essentially just need to some brass funnels on the back here, and also place some andesite to make sure that's the only thing that it's pulling out. And then bring this along here and place down even more funnels. I'm gonna place some mixers down on this to help make our TUFF. One thing I have actually realized I've forgotten to do is place some pipes underneath all this, because all of this is going to need some lava. Of course, we are going to need to bring our lava pipe over, probably from over here, which currently also goes into our andesite farm. And yeah, that's not too far away. And hopefully this should still be close enough that we don't need another pump. Also, once again, racing to make sure I don't get lavaed up. Oh god. Oh god. Okay. Okay, there we go. That's all of those hooked up. And I also need to make sure that I do the same thing with the chutes, these ones as well, and start hooking these up to their respective spots. Then actually what I'm also going to do is split this belt into two, because I believe we are making enough andesite to do about 16 different tuff makers, because we definitely have enough cobblestone. So let's hook up a separate belt on the side here, and we're just gonna more or less repeat this exact same setup over here, with of course some more chutes set up on these ones, and then grabbing these and hooking them up to these chutes. My one concern at the moment, I think, with these is it potentially hitting the cobblestone above it, although I do intend to at least get rid of the top ones when I make it a bit more prettier. So we'll see what happens after I am done with this. And of course with these as well, I also want to set these to probably about 10 to prevent any kind of overflow. And then once again, need to make sure that these are all filtered up correctly to be making tuff. And all of our funnels going in, although definitely not up there. I think I only need to place an andesite tunnel for this one, because I think that just distributes it like kind of evenly. I don't actually remember. Of course, I still also need to pull out the tuff from these ones as well. And then I do want to pull around the tuff to this side, because this is where our storage is going to be. I also can't forget to also hook up the basins over here as well to our lava source. And that is more or less the basic setup done. I now just need to kind of hook everything up to our power source, as well as of course actually making sure everything is attached to each other. So let me go do that real quick. Okay, I believe everything is now hooked up. I brought in a bit of powered chain to the inside of the middle and then did a bunch of underground stuff to make sure everything is powered. Now the last thing I really need to do is probably just place some lava down and some water, and then hook up our chain drive, and that should start mining the cobblestone. In fact, actually, I did forget to hook up these, so let me fix that real quick. There we go. Now, all of that should now start flipping it over, although I've come to a sudden realization that the placement of this means that the gravel is hitting that. So, gotta figure out a way around that one. Okay, there we go. With some adjustments later, I moved the power all the way over here so it didn't get in the way. And now everything seems to be working as it should. We have gravel going into here and into these basins, and then mixing with the lava and the flint. But I'm pretty sure I actually do need to swap this out for an andesite funnel. Force split that so it's going into each side. So yeah, it appears that the andesite is keeping up somewhat. And now I just need to place these into some form of storage, but I also want to split this out into two as well. And I'm definitely going to turn this down in editing, but oh my god, is it loud over here at the moment. All these mechanical presses smacking down. But I think what I'll do, actually, let me take this. I'm actually going to create two storage systems over here. And I'll put them on stilts to make it look a bit nicer. But I'm going to have one big vault over here. And that's going to just hold on to all the tuff. And I'm going to have a second vault here, which I do need to get some more vaults for. I think what I'm going to do here is pull off of our line here. Oh god. Not quite like that though. I think in this case I want two belts coming off of here, making sure to lift it up by one. And the reason why I'm splitting it up like this is so that one can just be filled with tuff, and the other I want to place some grindstones, or not grindstone, but crushing wheels. I'll place these on this side, because the one thing that you do get from tuff when you crush them down is a mixture of flint, gold, copper, zinc, and iron. And I mostly want it for these three middle things, the gold, the copper, and the zinc. Because although it's not that much, it might build up to a certain amount, considering I don't actually have any way of automating those things at this moment in time. So that should be quite nice. I think if I place some tunnels down here, I don't know if that works or not. I guess I'll have to just give it a try. They don't look connected up, so perhaps not. Okay, after some messing around, I realized I had set up the belts wrong, so that should all now be doing that properly. And then I also need to make sure that it is going inwards. So we now have one path of TUFF going into this item vault, and a bunch of other TUFF being processed into this item vault. And as we can see, we already got a little bit of everything so far. Yeah, there we go. That is more or less what I want. We are making quite a bit of TUFF. We've already got over 1,000 in here. We're slowly producing all this stuff as well. I might have to change up this belt system so that it goes in 64 at a time. I believe that's actually quicker than 1 at a time, but I'm not sure how I would go around about that. So I'll leave it for now. Now, the next thing I need to do is more or less just kind of make this look a bit neater and prettier, although it doesn't look too bad at the moment. But the main issue is the cobblestone farm, I think, needs to be changed. And then I do want to decorate the rest of the inside and outside of this building a little bit. So I will return once I've done that. And there we go. That is more or less the finished product. On the inside, I've added a bunch of different crates, some andesite bars, some more girders around, and some scaffolding further up. I ended up doing a little bit less in here than I was originally expecting to, mainly because I need to essentially leave room for all these things to be flicked across the room. As you can kind of see, they go up pretty high. So I couldn't really do anything in addition to what I wanted to do, but for the edge walls, I did add a kind of retaining kind of thing, make sure those walls stand up. Of course, did that on the other side as well. And then on the outside wall on this side, I added some scaffolding, which you can go up a ladder for, and it doesn't actually go anywhere, but it's just there for the aesthetic. And then on the other side, I did more or less the same thing, but just more of a retaining wall and just threw some trees in front of it for now. So I'm sure there's going to be another building there at some point. I also kind of boarded up these like old doors, so to speak, where the old entrances to these buildings used to be. But I still added up a bit of a path to them, some crates on the outside, and then put some leaves and stuff where it looks like it's overgrown a little bit. Yeah, all in all, I think it looks quite good. Again, a little bit different from the rest of my factories, but I like that. That's kind of the point. And in terms of our production, we already got 11k TUFF and quite a bit of gold, zinc, iron, and copper. I might have to figure out a way of just getting these out and turned into ingots for easier access. In fact, you know what? Let's do that right now. Have enough space here for all 4 of these things that we need. I think if we simply put in some item vaults, our mechanical presses in, some brass funnels, and make sure to filter these to our different types. Filter the basins so they're doing it properly. And then I think as long as I put these depots down and hook these up so they're actually connected to the system, turn these around, that should start putting some ingots on. Although these are coming out 1 at a time. So I'm actually going to place more of these down with once again their respective ingots. And I've set these all up to exactly 64 so that they'll only pop out when these are ready. They only currently have about 58 or 59 of them, but that's fine. But if I need any of these kind of materials, I can just quickly come over here and pick them up. But anyway, I think that's all I have time for today. Thank you everyone for watching. I super appreciate it. We are getting extremely close to 1,000 subs now. At the time of recording, I am currently at 986 subs, so getting extremely close. And thank you everyone for the support. It's greatly appreciated. And I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye for now.